Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Show. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and I wish to welcome you all to another episode, another life changing, business changing show, where today, with our distinguished angels, we will be diving into the topic of faith, chapter 2 of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I'm so excited today to partner with my colleagues here as we pontificate about what faith really means to us. And we usually have a distinguished guest, but today it's just us. It's just us really diving into this chapter, diving into this text, and allowing you to be able to see how faith plays out into our lives. So let's go ahead and bring in our angels. No, none other, our first distinguished angel, Pegine. Pegine, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am so happy to be here. I'm always happy when we all get together to discuss a topic. And today's topic of faith resonates so deeply in me. And I am a huge believer in the self confidence formula, which is
Mm,
in faith. And the reason that I'm a proponent of that is it's changed my life because I didn't know for a long time that I build faith in me. I
mm,
used to think that faith was something outside that I might get or like some divine was going to receive. But I, over time in the studying of this chapter, recognize that it's my responsibility to develop faith, and the self confidence formula that's in the faith chapter is a process whereby I gain faith in myself,
mm.
faith in showing up, faith that I can have what I want to have and do what I want to do, and I can get the job done with my faith, both in myself and the outcome. So I am very excited about this. I'm so happy that you're leading. I can't wait to get our conspirators together because this is going to be a dynamic morning.
I'm so excited, Pegine. I love what you said because after a while, when you're practicing this type of faith, it almost becomes natural. It becomes second nature. I'll tell you a little bit later on how it plays out for me. Um, and let's bring in our next distinguished angel, the leadership strategist, the whiskey jazz and leadership guru, Galen Bingham. Good morning to you, Galen, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm really excited about this conversation, and I don't know if my process is any different than yours, but I've read this book several times. But
Mhm.
before we go on for a topic or a chapter, I kind of reread my notes. I kind of reread the chapter, and man, every time something comes to light that wasn't there before, right? Although I've got underlines and highlights, I was really taken by this idea of faith being an emotion. And I've never really thought of faith as an emotion, but similar to what you said, Pagine, I always thought of faith as being something outside that's kind of imposed. And religions talk about you've got to have faith, you've got to have faith in order for this thing to work. But it took me down this wormhole of faith being emotion, and I actually looked it up, and faith is defined as a strongly held belief, theory, or conviction,
Mhm.
and that emotions is the way that our brain gives meaning to bodily sensations based upon past experiences. And again, then I went to this speaker author. He's kind of a mystic, Shot Guru, and he says that nothing has meaning until I assign meaning to it. And if that's true, why would I ever assign a negative meaning to anything? So for me, that just really highlights how we get to choose our emotions. As a matter of fact, again, to borrow from you, Pagine, it's our responsibility to choose our emotion. And when, I've got to speak before a larger crowd that I'm used to speaking to, or a coach and executive that is in an industry that I've never been in before, I've got the ability to kind of hype myself up, get myself ready, and choose the emotion that I believe is necessary for what I'm getting ready to get into. Why can't we do the same thing with faith? We can choose faith. And I just can't wait to get into this conversation.
Hey, Galen, before you go, can you repeat the definition that you found of faith? I just want to write it down.
Yeah.
So I've already started. I just want you to know, between the two of you, I've already started having all these notes. I don't know about everybody else watching, but between the two men, I'm already filling up my card.
So it's interesting. I mean, when you go to any word and you look at definitions, there's always like the primary, secondary, and tertiary definition. This was the tertiary definition. It says faith is a strongly held belief, theory, or conviction. And it's not necessarily just assigned to religion as it's usually thought of. It's a strongly held belief, theory, or conviction. And again, just the linkage between faith and emotion just really took me down this wormhole.
Love it.
I do love it as well, Pegine. Faith, one thing that I notice about it, it becomes second nature the more you embrace it. Page 48 of the text says, faith is a state of mind which may be induced by autosuggestion. Ann McNeill, the master wealth builder. What does faith look like in your life?
This is what it looks like.
I like that. I like that.
Yes, my face, FACE, is what it looks like in living color. And since we're talking about definitions, I have one that I actually read from Napoleon Hill, and I'll read it to all of you. He says that faith is a state of mind that has been called the mainstream of the soul, through which one's desires, plans, and purpose can be translated into its physical or monetary equivalent. And I think that that's what we're talking about here today. It can be physical, it can be financial, if you will. And so as we delve into this subject, the application of your faith is what we're going to be discussing, because we can have that faith, but if we're not applying it, what good is it?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Where do we even start for sure? Here's where I want to start, from the text. And I'm a really big believer in these two sentences I'm getting ready to read. When people first come into contact with crime, they abhor it. But if they remain in contact with crime for a time, they become accustomed to it and endure it. If they remain in contact with it long enough, they finally embrace it and become influenced by it. And here's my language, it becomes part of them. Just by association. Jim Rome says you are your average of your 5 closest friends. And even family. I'm going to add family because some people say, I don't have 5 friends. Okay, well, your family also. What is their mindset like? What is their trajectory? What is are they thinking next level? So I'm going to go around the room here and begin to ask us about what faith looks like in your life, personal life, but I'm also going to ask about what it looks like in your business life, because these stories are going to be impactful on so many different levels. But before we do, let's make sure the audience understands about this text a little bit more in depth. And Ann McNeill, do you mind introducing this text to our audience?
Well, I like to go to the text when we're talking about the introduction. And I think that Napoleon Hill does it very well when he talks about faith is a state of mind which can be induced by autosuggestion. And Pegine talked about the fact that the autosuggestion through the self-confidence formula is one way of programming your mind to induce faith. Because one of the things we'll talk about here in this program this morning is how do you increase your faith? And Napoleon Hill goes on to tell us that, he gives this long list of what faith is. He says, if you have faith in yourself and faith in the infinite, before you begin, you should be reminded, right, that it is what gives you life, gives you power, it gives you action for the impulse of thought. And I put a pin in that for a second, because so often we have thoughts, we have hunches, we have these urges, but then we don't act on them. That is the applied faith that comes into effect. He goes on to say that it is the starting point of all achievement. And if you think about this podcast we're on, you think about everything that each of us have decided to do in our business, especially when it comes to masterminding, we started with the possibility that there's faith to do that. It is the only antidote, he tells us, to failure. And it is also the element or chemical, which when you mix it with the prayer, and what is prayer itself? It's a form of affirmation. It is auto-suggestion to yourself about what it is that you desire. But none of it's going to happen if you don't have faith. So, Peter, that would be my introduction. And I'm really not kidding when I say my face to me. Because of my faith, I wrote many, many years ago, as I was going through some trials, tribulations, and struggles, still now, but many years ago, in the rereading of this book, I came up with this line that I wrote, and I said, I have faith that I pray like it all depends on God, but I work like it all depends on me. And the combination of those two things has helped me phenomenally over the years to achieve my desired goals, but not ever without this element of faith.
Wow.
Hey, Peter, can I just say something, jumping on what Ann's saying is, when we talk about that affirmation, it's why those 13 principles that we read is so critically important to, I know that we sometimes like, should we not talk about it? Should we not show the commercial? But I truly think that the more we show it, it's an affirmation to remind us we have faith in this book. Don't you agree?
I do agree. And Galen, can you tee up the video for us, please?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One of the things I continue to talk about is how all of these principles kind of sit on top of each other as if they were building blocks. And it's easy to pick out your favorite principle and say, that's what the system is built on.
Yeah.
But as you listen and watch this video, I'm going to encourage you to think about how everything sits on top of everything. Everything starts with desire, but it builds with faith, and it just keeps building till you get to this point where you're doing like my favorite musician says, you learned everything you can, and now you just learn everything you can, forget everything you've learned, and then just show up. Right. And that's the space that we're trying to get to, where this is something that you don't have to think about. You just show up, but it starts with these building blocks. So with that, let's jump into this video.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith. Having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
Love that overview video. And it's interesting, Galen, as you even mentioned, watching it over and over again allows me to be able to reflect a little bit deeper into how I look at each of these principles overall. So I appreciate you even putting that into my mind a little bit. So let's dive on in. I'm excited to hear from you all. And listen, I know you all have a lot of stories, okay? I know you have long stories, but we only have a finite amount of time. So here's the question for you all. And I'm going to start out with life, faith in your life, not your business so much, just in your general life. What does faith look like in your general life? And here's an example of what I'm looking for here as well. On page 53 of the text, there's a poem. It says, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the first and last verses. And then I'm going to let you know how it plays out in my life. And then Pegine, I'm coming to you first. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it is almost certain you won't. Napoleon Hill finishes off with, life's battles don't always go to the stronger or the faster man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. How that plays out in my life is this, and this is a little bit unique path here, but I don't get sick. I don't catch colds. And literally I live in Chicago where it's freezing right now, but I haven't gotten sick. Probably the last time I remember I was sick was probably 2007, 2008 when I first got to Chicago. I believe in my mind, I tell myself that I'm not getting sick. I'm not going to get sick. Now, don't get me wrong. It has become a part of me so much so that I don't even think about it enough or much, but it just doesn't happen. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. So don't get me wrong. This is not by knocking anyone else who is watching and what you may be going through or who you know may be going through. I'm just talking about Peter James and my experiences and my reflection on how this faith has played out in one area of my life. And there's other areas, but I'm just giving one specific example. Pegine, what is an example of how faith may be impacting you in your general life?
Boy, this is a great question. And so many stories were coming up in my mind as you were talking about, so I'm going to two very short things. One to tie back to you. I was raised by a single mom. And in our house, from the time I was little, we were not allowed to get sick. It's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. You are not sick. You're going to school. And literally I don't know if we were sick, but she sent us to school anyway because I was more afraid of her than I was.
Than the sickness.
Mom said I'm not sick. Mom said I'm not sick.
Yeah. The other thing, but the thing that as you were talking, there's so many things that are flowing in my mind, but I live by chance, CHANTS. And for years, many people knew that I had a chance that I lived by to keep me focused on where I wanted to go. And it was be feisty, be fearless, be focused, have fun. And I said this chant to myself for years and years and years to give me, and it was very specific about why I chose this. One is I could remember it, right? And I could stay focused on it. But what it was be feisty. Gave me the courage to ask for the things that I needed to ask for, to show up in the places that I didn't think I was worthy of. But I was still going to show up because I was feisty enough to say, move out of the way, I'm here. It was really important, right? Be feisty, be fearless was built in me the blessing that this energy, this source would give me a message, a clarity of just go. And it's kind of like being on the edge of a cliff and they're saying, go, 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 go. And you go. So be careful who you hang out with. I chose to hang out with my higher source who would say, go, 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 go. And most of the time it worked out really, really well. So be feisty, be fearless, be focused. This was huge for me because I could jump around a lot of different places, but the be focused was choose my lane. What kept on coming up for me? And of course, for me, it was working with women, but not any women. It was working with what I call Jedi women, the women who have this yearning, this they can't get it out of them. So, but the be focused reminded me who my people are, because it's really easy to go, oh, looking over here, oh, looking over there. The focus kept me thing, right? Be feisty, be fearless, be focused, and have fun was something that I needed to remind myself that joy and happiness and giddiness and enthusiasm is critically important to success. And so I wrapped it into this chant, which gave me tremendous faith. And can I share one way of how I did this? What happened? Every single person in business hits a wall. I don't care who you are. You're all going to hit a wall. It's horrible and it feels terrible. And I hit a wall and it was pouring out. It was pouring. It was awful. And I had like a dark cloud following me. And I went out of the house in the pouring rain, no umbrella, in Florida, thunderstorms coming out. And I went with my fist. I looked like one of those movie stars. Like going, This is not going to get me done. You think this is getting done? You forget who I am. I'm feisty. I'm fearless. I'm focused and fun. So move out of the way because this is happening. I don't care. And I'm crying and the rain is crying. And I'm like, no, I'm feisty. I'm fearless. I'm focused. I'm fun. I'm flourishing. Just get the job done. And I will never forget that day because shortly afterwards, everything changed for me. But that was faith. And I love how you said it, Ann, faith in action.
Love it. Love it, Pegine. Galen, faith in your general life, not business yet. We'll go to business in just a second.
Yeah. Very similar to you, Peter. I do have that same thing about I don't get sick. I don't see the benefits of getting sick. I don't understand why everyone's doing this because I don't see the benefits. But the other thing that is probably most prominent, this is actually one of the first one-on-one conversations I had with Ms. Ann. There is supposed to be a parking space for me near the front door of any store that I'm getting ready to go into. And I don't understand why they don't just put a sign up that says reserved for Galen Bingham. And I'm not talking about driving around the parking lot for hours and hours until someone leaves. No, what store are we going into? That one over there. Okay, well then I'll drive right up to the front door and my parking space. The question is it on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle? Because within the first 3 or 4 parking spaces of the front door, there's a parking space for me. And it's even gotten to a point where my wife knows, and she started saying, there's your parking space, right? Because they know that that's what's supposed to happen. And if by chance I happen to be in a different city or a different part of the world and they're not familiar with the rules by that store and there's no parking space, I actually get indignant because what is this? Where's my parking space? Because I've got this belief that there's supposed to be a parking space for me near the front door of any store that I'm going into. And I don't care what time of year, I don't care if it's Christmas, I really don't care. There's supposed to be a space for me. And that is just an example of something that I can't explain it. I can't describe it. I don't know why it's true. It seems unfair that other people don't have their parking spaces, but I have mine, right? And one of the first conversations I had with Ms. Ann, I don't know if she remembers it, I was telling her about that, and she listened politely, much like she's doing now. And then she brought it back to Think and Grow Rich, and she brought it back to my business, and she said, now we need to just have that same kind of faith about other parts of your business, other parts of your life. And I never really even thought about it that way. I just thought about there's supposed to be a parking space for me near the front door. So I for me, that's an example.
I love that, Galen. They didn't get the memo when there's not one in Europe or something like that, right?
Yeah, it takes a while to kind of go across the continent.
Might got lost in translation or something like that. Yeah, right. Ann McNeill, listen, I know this you exude Think and Grow Rich for sure. But what is faith? Let us know what faith looks like in your general life, your day-to-day life. Well, you are on mute, though.
Yeah, when you asked the question and you said personal, the first thing that came to me, and it might have been prompted by the poem that Pegine mentioned about, if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find, success begins with the fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster woman. But sooner or late, the woman who wins is the woman who thinks she can. And as a personal story, I had a situation in my life, I keep saying this, a number of them, that I was going through. And I start reciting that out loud in connection with what we hear about the faith chapter principle of autosuggestion, repeating. And at the time, my grandson was about 6, not quite 7. And I remember because first grade going second. And then he started reciting the poem, but he's also reading the book. He started reciting the poem. So I decided, maybe about a year into this. Now there's almost about 10 years between him and Ione, which is our second daughter. And at 12, somewhere around 11, 12, 13 in there, as she started learning how to invest and how to analyze stocks, she started speaking. And I started requiring that he would introduce his aunt by reciting that poem. Every single time any of us had to speak, he had to recite, even myself, he had to recite that poem as an intro to us. And so thank you so much for that, Pegine, because I'd totally forgotten about that. And then he goes on naturally to become a professional speaker himself. But this particular principle for me, and the poem in particular, has such great personal memories because, again, it is the application of what we're learning.
Yeah.
Now, the second one, I'll wait till you talk about the business.
Good stuff. Good stuff overall. This insight into faith and really what it means in our lives definitely does now bleed over into my business world and my business life. And how I've seen it play out in my business is, how I feel about revenue coming in. I don't stress. I don't panic. I just continue to put myself in the right places to the best of my ability. If something's going on and I'm available, I'll go and put myself in that place because magic can happen. If I can't go, hey, that's okay. It wasn't supposed to be. But now I got to ask everyone who's watching and listening, in your career or your business, we go back to the will and the desire for sure all the time, right? But now I got to ask you, where are you placing yourself? How are you placing yourself? What are you doing? Who are you surrounding yourself with? And do you have the faith that you will be a success? Because as that poem just mentioned, it begins with the belief that whatever you are dreaming is going to come to fruition.
Can I just interject? I have to ask this question on behalf of everyone who's listening. And we want to remind everybody in the chat that's chiming in, please remember to comment, like, and share, and subscribe, but also put your questions in the chat. But I really would like for you to share with us, Peter, was it always that way? Because for some of us, it was not always that way.
No. And then we're going to go to you next, Pegine, for sure, about your business. And no, I have to say, what is it? The scarcity versus abundance conversation there, Ann McNeill. And many of you who are listening were raised in somewhat of a family like me, especially if you were in a culture that scarcity passed down from generations. So now it arrived at you, and you get a little bit of money and you got to protect it. Put it in the mattress, put it in the bank, don't touch it. Because if you touch it, it's going to evaporate. It wasn't the investment conversation, it was the protection conversation. That's where my life has totally shifted. Whereas I'm not just, and I hate to say this word, but it's hoarding. I'm not just hoarding it, I am applying it. I'm applying this faith with the financials, with the scarcity versus abundance mindset, but also even in my business activities, I'm applying the faith. I lost out on an opportunity this week. That's okay. It wasn't supposed to be. Something else is coming around the corner. I know it. And I don't even dwell on it. I just know it because I've been doing it for long enough. So thank you for the question. Yeah, it has not definitely always been this way. I've had to do multiple things on a regular basis, and I'm still coming out of this a little bit too, to make sure that there's always a stream coming in. Now I'm more focused on my time, my energies, and my efforts. I'm babbling a little bit. Pegine, on to you.
So absolutely, it's about applying faith. And I'm going to share two things to you. One is I carry with me and I make for myself my business plan that it fits my pocketbook. But here's where my magic lies. So every day, no matter what, no matter where I am, I read my declarations. They are right here, both for physical and my business. Every day, no matter what, I have my affirmations that I read. And it's really important that the affirmations that I've written are in alignment where I'm going. So I never, ever, ever write anything from I'm going to become. I write everything from I am.
Love that.
I am a big believer of the Jabez prayer. So I have Jabez prayer, bless me indeed, expand my territory, that you would be mine, keep me from evil and negativity, that I don't cause harm to myself or others. And I have that written out every day, no matter what. I have written, because there are times when I'm not in a space of awesomeness. And so I have timed out 17-second statements. Because if I can read this in 17 seconds, I could shift my attitude. I shift my faith. And then when we talk about income, I clearly write, here's what's wonderful thing is, when you start getting money coming in, you like it. And so you increase yourself a little bit more. So, but I have to know how I'm going to invest it and spend it. So I have my monthly self-care numbers. I determine this, my monthly household numbers, my monthly business numbers. I know what my nut is. I know what my goal is. Those are the two different things, right? One is my nut, and my nut grows every year. So, because I'm investing more in myself every year. And then I don't look at what I'm spending. I handwrite what I'm receiving. I love going to my bank account. I love looking into it and going, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at what's coming in. Because I used to spend so much time looking at what was going out and not noticing what was coming in.
Yeah.
And gratitude plays an enormous role in receiving and allowing things to come in on every day in every way. So I know, so that's one way. But here's the other way so this week was rough. I was called to submit a proposal, and I was told to give it everything. To what would you charge for the whole enchilada? And it was for a Fortune 10 global multi company. And I'm really grateful that I wrote it, but it was so funny how my money thoughts were stopping me from asking for what I truly deserve. So I first started writing, I started writing, what would they pay me? So now I don't have a clue how much money they have, but I'm imagining what they would pay me. And that money that I was willing to pay myself was based on what my bank account was, not what the Fortune 100 bank account was. And so I had to go and call people and ask advice. And what I received when I put that together was a place where I know I'm valued. I know they have 3 different ways to reach out to me. I know I get recurring income and I feel satisfied. So it took me almost 7 days of dealing with my own sense of worthiness, concept of value, clarity of who I was, and then faith and action. I'm telling you, when I hit, and this is a true story, I hit send. I always put my partner on the send. He checks it out. I sent it and he goes, you sent the wrong proposal. And the way I set up my system, I was able to go, ooh, what was that mental disorder that went in my head that made that mistake? It wasn't a mistake. It was just that I still hadn't had my faith in place that I was worth it. I went back, quickly put the right thing. Everything was done. Thankful of my systems work. But it was faith in myself, faith in my numbers, faith in the universe that I was being protected. Faith that said, you declared it, you said it, you want it, you'll get it. And that is critically important in this process of business. It's so much in ourselves and our source, way more than what's out there. That's what I have to say.
Love it, Pegine. Let's go over to Galen and then to Ann. And Galen and Ann, Imelda put a great question in the chat. I want you to address it while you give your responses about how faith has applied to your business. Imelda says, how do you deal with those setbacks?
Yeah, I saw that. That actually was my response. Thank you.
So Galen, let's go with you first, and then Ann will hit you next.
Yeah, when we landed on your question, before I get to Imelda's question, I was thinking about a podcast interview that I was part of last week. I was on great podcast. What is innovation? And it's led by a good friend of mine, Jared Simmons. And so he asked everyone at the beginning, what is innovation? And then you spend time kind of explaining your answer. My answer, and Miss Ann, you may chuckle, I said that innovation is creative or synthetic imagination that enhances value. And we kind of broke that down. Obviously, that was a big part of that is from Think and Grow Rich. But how I bring that back to this conversation is we talked about how synthetic imagination really pulls from what's already been. And many companies, many executives, they prefer synthetic imagination because you can find white papers, you can find other companies that have done things. It's easier for you to predict and project return on investment because you've got something to pivot from. Whereas creative imagination is just following your gut. It's kind of hard to find a white paper on this hunch that you got. And I made the case that creative imagination will give you oftentimes the same benefit as synthetic imagination. It's just that creative imagination, those benefits typically come faster, right? And so in that conversation about how does this impact my business, I think when I'm working with my team, I give them a lot more latitude because I don't believe that there's anything that they can get me into that I can't get out of if I needed to. They can't, I don't know, and there's this developed confidence that I have in my business that there is no idea that they could bring me that if we decide to follow it is going to make such a devastating impact on my business that I can't fix it if we need to. And therefore, I'm playing with more creative ideas rather than just relying on the tried and true. And so, again, that's just an example of where I've just got this learned faith in myself because of the catalog of experiences that I've had, because of the things that I've totally screwed up because of my own boneheaded actions, and I've found a way to get through it, that I don't believe that my assistant, I don't believe that my marketing executive, I don't believe that my colleagues can get me into anything that I can't find a way to make that be positive. And I see Wyman Wimbush in the chat. Just a great leader himself. And I'm going to rely on you to give me the scripture. Wyman, I want you to post the scripture that I'm going to reference here. I know that Miss Ann is going to have the scripture. I don't know scripture references, but Wyman, I want you to post it. One of the things that is always at the top of my mind is I believe that all things are going to work to my good as long as I love God and that I'm doing what is consistent with his will. everything's going to work out. I don't know how it's going to work out. Have no idea how it's going to work out, but that's not my job to know how. It's my job to do what I'm supposed to do, consistent with why I was put here on the planet, and just trust that it's going to work out. And if it doesn't work out immediately, it's because there's something that I'm not supposed to experience right now, because something greater is calling. And again, I don't know how this works. I just know it seems to work for me.
Can I ask a question of Ann and all this? Because I love what you said, Galen, but I really, can you talk about that? If you're not supposed to know how, what are you supposed to know?
For me, I believe you're supposed to know what. You're supposed to know what you want. And if we take this out of scripture, I believe that the universe is about action. The universe wants to act. The universe is just this ball of energy that's just wanting to go different places. And if you are very, very clear about what you want the universe to deliver, it's going to start delivering that. But if you're not clear about what the universe wants to deliver, it's just going to start delivering a whole bunch of things, because it wants to act. And my job, I believe, is to be very clear about what it is that I want. Not how to get it, because I don't know all the ways to get it. I've got a couple of suggestions as to how this might happen, but I don't know everything. I just need to know what I want.
What about you, Ann?
Well, let me start with your question first, and then I'll go to the question from Imelda. Desire chapter answers the question. Page 28, when he asks, what is it that you want? And later in that chapter, he says, it's not our job, like Galen is saying, to figure out how we're going to get it. But like a magnet, just the idea that you know what. And I listened to a lot of Earl Nightingale and his audio on The Secret. And he talks about, percentages of people. And he said, if you have a goal, you already represent, I'm going to increase the number and say 90% of the successful people to know what you want. But you don't need to know how. And there's so many stories in this book, like the Great Chicago Fire, when all of the stores were burned, and one merchant said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here, and I'm going to build again. He didn't know how, but he knew exactly what he wanted. When Barnes boarded that freight train, he didn't know how he was going to become the business associate of Edison, but he knew exactly what he wanted. When that little girl, mama told her, no, I need that 50 cent. She didn't know how she was going to get it, but, she asked, and then he buffed, and then she stepped forward and demanded. And I get chills even now, even repeating it. So the power is in the desire. That was principle 1. Now we're in principle 2. It does not mean that things are not going to happen, but by faith, ... Now let me go to Imelda's question. She said about setbacks. I mentioned that poem earlier because I had a major setback in my life. I often talk about December 31st, 1979, not being able to save $1,000. And then years later, I was able to save about $15,000. It was all I had. And I was just trudging along. I mean, saving pennies here and doing a little something there. And I'd save about $15,000. And then this idea came about whereby someone that looked like me approached our mastermind group that had already formed by then. And, he was a financial planner, and he was going to invest our money. And I gave him my mistake, maybe not. I gave him my life savings, never to be seen again. Now, don't judge me. Don't judge me. But by faith and listening to and reading this book and meeting with our mastermind group every single Saturday, I knew that there had to be a seed in here somewhere. And what came out of this setback for me was a setup, like Dr. Willie Johnson says, for greater success. And the setup that came out of it for me was I had to deal with the fact that I have 2 degrees at the time. I had one business working on another one. I had a good corporate job, married with the family, with the, all of that stuff. How in the heck did not know anything about investing? And I actually was journaling about this about a week ago, because my daughter, Ione, came to me and said, she was telling me a story about, she said, 20 years ago, I invested $2,000 in Pfizer and I invested $2,000 in Home Depot. Can you guess how much I have in each one now? And I never touched either one in 20 years. When she was 12, she was 12, but anyway, 30 something now. And I guessed Pfizer, I said like $5,000, and Home Depot, I said like 10. She said, no, Home Depot 48. And Pfizer was like 7 or something like that. But when she walked out of the room, I sat there, and this goes to the question about the setback. You see, nothing is a failure unless you quit. Mm-hmm. If I just, sat in that space, oh, he did this. No, he didn't do that to me. I did it to myself for not realizing that I did not know anything. And yes, I have an undergraduate degree in accounting and a master's in finance. What does that mean? That means I'm broke mentally as it relates to finance, not finances, but financial empowerment and learning how to analyze stocks and how to invest. So when that happened to me, now this is the setup. I realized, oh my gosh, here we are masterminding, and this is about an international mastermind association, a mastermind group. So this part of the conversation about the mastermind group and the power they're in. So I came back to the mastermind group. Now, mind you, now he had talked to all of us. He knew which one of us did know about investing. He didn't take their money. He knew those of us that didn't. So how did I not know I should have gotten a statement every quarter? Well, didn't know that. And so because of that, I suggested that we started reading all this other stuff. Let's read something about investing. And the first book we read was The Millionaire Next Door. And in that book, it talked about these women that beat the stock market. So now let me wrap up with this. We're talking about faith. I had the faith and the common sense to apply my faith to the knowledge that I did not have, to know I needed to take some action to do something about it. Now, let me fast forward almost 30 years later. Almost 30 years later, when Ione left the room, I started journaling these thoughts. And they started out like this: what if I quit? What if I did not seek more information? What if, and I kept going, what if? And the what if turned into pages, because the realization is that through my setback and my struggle and my trial, many people are being positively impacted to learn how to invest. It looked like me. Through those trials and tribulations, the setback has created so many children who are now financially free, like Ione, sitting on 6 and 7 figures from a small investment over a long period of time. I mean, I could go on and on. So when you talk about a setback, I'd like to encourage everybody who's listening to this from now on, when you think setback, think setup. Switch your mind quickly into what is the sugar you're going to add to this lemon to make lemonade. Thank you.
Wow.
So I guess you recouped the $15,000.
I take the Fifth Amendment. I got something even greater.
That was like a mic drop there for us all. Don't even know where to go to next. Our time is drawing short.
Ann McNeill. Let's go there to the annual meeting, since that was my task.
Tell us really quickly about the annual meeting, and then tell us how we can stay in touch with you.
All 3 things in a minute. Okay. Number one, if you are interested in our beta test, which we're doing as a part of this mastermind association, Next Tuesday, you can join us by going to internationalmasterminders.com/group mastermind. And you can register to join the conversation as we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of masterminding. That's one. Secondly, we would love to encourage you to join us in 2023 to review your annual report. But we want you to start now. Don't wait till the end of the year. Right, Galen? Right, Peter? Right, right, Pegine, right, Imelda, and all of the other people who are Wyman, all the other people who are listening in. And we really want to send all of you love. You know, Facebook user, Imelda, Dr. Rubin, all of you, all of you that chime in, Monique, Imelda, and Doretha, I'm gonna get in trouble by trying to call names, but we want to thank you for chiming in. But please remember to subscribe. But go to internationalmasterminders.com and you can register for 2023. The investment right now is very low. It will go up progressively during the year. So I want to just remind us, please don't wait to register. And that is January the 6th and 7th at the Embassy Suites on Yamato Road in Boca Raton. Now, if you are interested in having greater clarity in your highest income producing areas of your business and your life, but only if you are interested, you can connect with me and go to annmcneill.com/coaching. Again, that's annmcneill.com/coaching. But only if you have a desire, you don't need to know how you're going to get there, to have greater clarity in your highest income producing areas of your business and your life. Back to you, Peter.
Awesome. Good stuff. We have a few minutes. Hey, folks who are watching, hang in there with us. We're just wrapping this up. Pegine, one aha, and how do I stay in touch with you?
The aha is, I love this program. I know I'm a host, but I walk away with such faith and joy and focus, and bring it on, world, because I'm ready to receive. So I love you. I love you all so much. And those watching, I love you so much too. And I don't use that word frivolously. It's, my heart is beaming right now. And for those of you who, every single day you need something that's going to say, I'm on it, I'm growing, I'm there. You want to come to Pegine.club. You want to join me at Pegine.club every day. You are receiving some daily bits of brilliance, excitement, thrilling, motivation that's going to come to you in your ears. Go to Pegine.club, $7 a month for over 30 days of inspiration, motivation, and education. Come on now. Go to Pegine.club.
Come on now. Okay, Galen, how do we give us an aha, and how do we stay in touch with you, Galen?
Yeah, so the aha is really based off of Imelda's question. Each year when I do my annual report and prepare for the annual meeting, I pick a member of my invisible board of directors to be the chairman for that upcoming year. This year it's Kobe Bryant. Last year it was Bruce Lee. And when I was researching Bruce Lee, I really got an understanding of the concept of the yin and the yang, because people often think of them as individual pieces. You think of negative things or setbacks as isolated incidents. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that it became clear to me is that they are both two halves of the same thing. They work together with each other. You can't understand good unless you've had something bad. You can't understand light unless you've experienced darkness. And the concept that drove that home for me is, if someone were to say, I'm going to pay you $1 million when I flip this coin. I'll pay you $1 million if you can tell me how many times it's going to turn up heads. But if you get it wrong, you got to pay me $1,000. Who would take that bet? No one would take that bet. But if I said, I'm going to flip this coin and I'm going to guarantee you that 75 times it's going to turn up head, would you be willing to bet how many times it's going to turn up tails? Right? you're going to be more confident in making that bet because you understand one half of it. You understand one half of the equation, and therefore you're willing to project the other half. If I tell you that your setbacks are in equal proportion with your comebacks, and then I can tell you how many setbacks you're going to have, now you're going to be excited because you know there's got to be an equivalence. It might not be totally 100% equal, but I'm going to be in that same neighborhood of good things coming. And so now when I have setbacks, I get excited because I know the universe is planning to deliver something incredibly exciting for me. I just don't know what it is. I just don't know when it's coming, but I'm looking for it.
How do we stay in touch with you, Galen?
As far as getting hold of me, lots of different ways. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm all over the place. But the funnest way, the most entertaining way is to go to any podcast platform, plus Audible, plus Amazon, and type in whiskey, jazz, and leadership. We talk to incredible leaders from all walks of life. We talk about the whiskeys they drink, the jazz they listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I double dog dare you to try us just once. You actually can listen to conversations from Miss Ann McNeill. You can listen to season 1 conversations with Dr. Peter James, and I've got a treat for you coming very, very shortly in season 3. A conversation with Miss Pegine. So we're going to hit you with all of it. I double dog dare you to try us just once.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Hey, Peter, how do we find out about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first, let me just say this too. For those of you who are watching, I intentionally put myself in this sphere of experts, this way and that way, of experts to surround myself with. I'm intentionally doing that because it also helps to build up my faith, right? Who is that for you? And all 4 of us are identifying ways that you can begin to surround yourself or to continue to surround yourself with like-minded individuals who are on the right trajectory. Going back to the question from Imelda, listen, roadblocks, obstacles, and hurdles, they're going to come in life. It's a no-brainer. We're humans. The environment is the environment. Roadblocks, but the perspective I have is there's always a way through them, over them, or around them. All the time. There's always a way. And when I say roadblocks, obstacles, and hurdles, there's a lot. We've been in a pandemic, political strife. So we can keep going on and on about stuff. There's always a way. What's your way? So my name is Dr. Peter A. James. Excited to be here with you all today. You can find me on any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames, or shiftyourmindset.com, where you can start to find some phenomenal tools to get you to your next level. Hey, folks, this was phenomenal. This was awesome. Thank you all for your time diving into the chapter 2 of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Faith. How are you exercising your faith beginning today? See you next week.